I think that's the first time I've ever heard amazing person synonymous with an insurance person, so I certainly appreciate that. So I'm here today, want to keep it loose, have a conversation with you guys about identity crises, more specifically what I've been through and kind of the crises that I've dealt with and how I've struggled, failed, succeeded, cried, fought, been through the whole thing. But before I get into it, I want to kind of ask you guys to think about it a little bit differently as you're listening to me, in this sense to where, kind of more of a microscopic look at it, to where I want you to think about your own identities and your own processes to the level all the way down to no matter what decision you make every single day, no matter how big, no matter how small, that it shapes your path and it shapes your character and it shapes where you're going. But more importantly than that, it affects those around you and it affects everybody in your circle. It affects those who love you, your friends, family, coaches, doctors, whoever. That's an awesome responsibility, right? And I think when we're talking about identity, we don't often think of it on that level and the others we affect because it's ours. It's our identity, it's mine. It's not yours, it's mine. So I'm only going to care about what my identity is. To visually help get you guys there, I'll give you a cheap, I'm kind of an analogy geek, so in the spirit of the masters, I'll give you a golf analogy. So when you go and take your golf swing, right? You want to hit your ball right down the middle at a certain trajectory. You train, you line up, you try to hit it the same way every time. I like to say the hardest shot in golf is hitting it straight. And I think you can use that in life. What happens when you go up and you try to hit that ball again the second time? You line up, except this time you're a centimeter off. The wind is a little bit different, the conditions has changed. So now, instead of that ball going straight down the middle, it's never happened to me, I'm terrible at golf, but the trajectory is different. So your path is either going to go left, it's going to go right, it's going to go up, it's going to go down. And that's what I'm trying to talk about here, that some of the decisions I made 10, 11 years ago has put me in this room today that I never would have thought in my wildest dreams would have happened. And, you know, what is identity? What do you think about when you hear that word? And you really look at it as yourself. Who am I? What am I? What do I want to be? What do I want to do? What does my mom want me to do? What does my girlfriend want me to do? What does my dog want me to do, right? Well, maybe not your dog, who cares about that? But then you throw tragedy in the mix of that, and certain things can happen. But do we ever sit down and we ask why? So let's say I want to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Why? Because it sounds good? Because your dad wants it? Or is it because of something that you really want? We only focus on that end game and not the decisions along the way that's going to get us there, or how long it's going to take us to get us there. So the beginning of my story, almost exactly 10 years ago, actually, I was a 21-year-old junior heading into my senior year here at Florida State University. And on vacation with my family out of the country, I witnessed my father's death. I see it every day, and there's nothing you can do about it, obviously. I'm glad that I still am reminded of it every day and see it every day. My dad was an amazing person. He was my hero. I'm the only son. He was a Florida State alumni as well. Taught me everything I knew, and obviously it was the worst day of my life. And in his death, I made a decision quickly. I have two older sisters who had both graduated and had great careers of their own. I decided to withdraw from FSU and move home. My mother was devastated, and I couldn't completely understand. I mean, we all were, but I couldn't completely understand her devastation. But I made the decision to come home and help her run the businesses, help sell them, try to take care of the family, do the right thing. And it was an easy decision. I get asked a lot when I speak at events such as this, is, you know, do you ever regret leaving and doing that? Of course not. I'd like to think of everybody in this room, if you have a family member that passes away and another family member needs help, you drop everything and leave to go do that. It was an easy decision. In my mind, I went over, I'll never forget, went over and I stood in the corner. I tried to be a man, right? I was going to stand in the corner and say, okay, having a conversation with myself. Okay, use this as an opportunity. you can be the man here. Everything's okay. And then I walk over this way and be like, but I'll do that tomorrow because I still want to go party. That's that. My heart was in the right place, but in my mind, I wasn't mature enough yet to go about it the correct way. I wasn't happy with who I was as a person. My identity was all over the place. I really struggled with it. I had an idea of who I thought I wanted to be, but it never came about that way. So in the midst of running my family's companies, was lucky enough to where we're in the process of already selling one of them my father had kind of put in place before he passed. And we were able to complete that transaction, and kind of a year and a half later down the road, I was looking for the next thing. I kind of had a get-rich-quick mentality, a theme in my head. And, you know, I had so many ambitions and so many things I wanted to do, and I didn't want to work to do it, right? I thought I was working, so I'd go into my dad's company. I'd work 2 or 3 hours a day, and I'd come home like, oh, man, that was tough. You know, overnight, you know, I went from being a 21-year-old senior here. Now I'm in charge of 70 employees with three different locations. We were in the restaurant business. And oh, by the way, 98% of those employees are all older than me. So you have a 21-year-old arrogant know-it-all coming in and starts giving orders and saying, you know, this is what we're going to do, and try to rally the troops and do the whole thing. And I was met with a lot of resistance, and they were right to give me that resistance because I didn't handle myself in the correct way. And struggling with identifying who I was, my lifestyle was awful. I was making terrible judgment choices. Actually even got myself into a situation that almost took my life a few months after my dad's life. And that was kind of the first part of when I recognized I needed to get a grip and figure out what I'm going to do from here on out. And because I'm sitting here thinking, how selfish of me, where I almost lose my life 3 months after my dad passes away. How could I do that to my family and put my mother and my sisters in that situation? And that really kind of changed things for me. But still, it's not like I grew up right then and there. I still made plenty of mistakes along the way. Got another opportunity to, we had a family friend who was a professional athlete. And he asked me for some help with one of his businesses out in Texas. So I was all excited. You know, I kind of just wanted to drop everything and leave. Of course, I had permission from my mother. But she wouldn't say no to me because I was so excited. I should have thought about things more appropriately before I jumped and leaped. And this athlete, this person was also tied in the music business. So here I am. I'm down in Fort Myers, Florida, running a barbecue restaurant. I get a call from somebody who's a pseudo-celebrity. So I think I'm going to move to Dallas. I'm going to become famous. I'm going to be his agent. I'm going to hang out with Mark Cuban. I'm going to marry Katy Perry. We're going to have lunch with Justin Timberlake on Sunday. It's going to be awesome, right? Clearly, that's not what happened. What I did, I jumped at the opportunity, worked my tail off, and the person I was involved in business with, he got traded to the other side of the world, had to shut the business down, and the biggest mistake I made a horrible business decision. Didn't get anything down on paper. So then now, and he kind of left me in the dust, right? So now I'm out in Texas, losing my house, my car got repossessed, kind of in the streets. This is 2 years after my dad passed, and I am now 24 years old. Obviously not famous. I'm not hanging out with Timberlake and Katy Perry, and you know, it's a mess. Called my mom and borrowed money just to drive home, which was certainly humbling. And then that's when got back involved with our family business, but it still wasn't right. I still struggled. I was becoming angry, and one thing that irritated me the most, I kept hearing, you know, Max, it gets easier with time. Things get better. We all hear that, right? And anytime you go through tragedy, just let another year pass. You'll figure it out. You'll grow up. Well, either I'm incredibly immature or I just couldn't get through it. And I realized what the problem was. I had taken what I saw and what I see every day, and I tried to put it away. I tried to hide it. I tried to act like it didn't bother me. I tried to act like not having a degree didn't bother me, which I would have been the only person in my family to not get a degree from FSU, dating all the way back to my grandmother who was here at Florida State College for Women. It's something very important to me, but it was what it was. So I decided I needed to confront that. And like I said, I was continuing to be angry. I couldn't understand why I couldn't get over my father's death. It's 5 years later, I'm telling myself I need to grow up. what the heck is wrong with you? And not such pleasant language. And I decided, so I thought I was doing the right thing. I called my family, and I said, hey, don't worry about me, but I'm leaving the country tomorrow for a couple days. My phone's not going to work, but I promise I'll come back and everything's okay. Thinking that I was doing the right thing. Of course, that's the worst phone call I can give my mother. And I did it. I went out of the country the next day. But what I needed to do to figure out what was going on with me is I went back to the spot where my dad died, the exact spot. And this was in the Cayman Islands of all places, which was, if you ever dealt with a death happening as an American citizen outside of the country, it's incredibly difficult to deal with because they have their own laws and practices. But I went back, and I figured out, and it was great because it was kind of instant. I figured out what I needed to do, how I needed to change myself and deal with who I was. I knew my father, I had moments where he would have been proud, but he would not have been happy and proud of what I become. My relationship with my mother was awful. I was horrible to her. I could not understand how her grief was any different from mine. It was horrible. I mean, it affected our relationship tremendously. And now I've been able to repair that through, my own maturation process, but kind of hit me within the first 10 minutes been there. I said, I need to go back to school, figure things out. At worst, I'll have a degree, and if anything fails, I'll be able to have an option. So you want to talk about identity crisis, try coming back to Florida State as a 27-year-old undergrad, as a junior. It's terrifying. I first got here when I was 17 years old out of high school. I was more excited than anything in the world. When I came back at 27, forget about it. I was terrified. I was so insecure about who and what I stood for and what I was. And, would people accept me because I was older? I'd wear my hat backwards everywhere to try to fit in and make myself look younger. I grew my hair out just because I got a little bit lazy, too. I had a beard. It was awful. I'm glad you guys don't have pictures of it. And by the way, I did this in high school, too. So I went through weird. I had the Eminem phase, and I've struggled with identity my whole life. I'm a complete basket case. But I came back, and I met some wonderful people here, and it was a better experience than the first time I came here. It's amazing how much you'll appreciate things when your parents aren't paying for it, and it's you, right? So that was interesting, eating cheaply and going through the struggle again. But it's what I needed, and it helped me understand of who I needed to become, and going through the process of how to get there, which is not focus so much on our ambitions, but focus on what we stand for and how we go about achieving those ambitions. And I'm not going to be cliche and sit here and talk to everybody about, you got to be full of character and you got to always do the right thing. Of course, that's the obvious. But you have to be comfortable knowing that making a big decision like that, like leaving a degree behind to go try to help your family, or leaving your family again to go to try to help another friend, and then coming back and leaving again to go help yourself, to get to a destination that you can't even see, that's 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road. And getting comfortable with that is incredibly difficult. It's terrifying, and it's something I struggled with greatly. When I got back here, the thing I learned the most about myself was that it doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter what occupation it is. It doesn't matter what you want to do, whether it's be a doctor, a teacher, or a coach, because your job performance is going to be identical no matter what your title is and no matter what your occupation is, because it all is about how you go about your business and how you handle your practices. So once I learned that, I started thinking about things when I wanted something. Instead of just jumping at it, I started thinking about what did I need to go to get there. And I also had to be okay with making those decisions, that it's going to hurt some feelings and it's going to hurt some relationships, and there's going to be some people that don't understand it, but sometimes it's okay to be selfish and do what you got to do. And one of the stories I love to tell about my dad is I give him all the credit in the world, because anybody here in the hospitality industry knows how difficult that can be. It's incredibly stressful, tough job, it's hard on the family. It's 7 days a week. Growing up, because my dad did it, I thought that's all I wanted to be. Thought he was my hero. I wanted to follow his footsteps. But when he passed and I became that, I hated it. Absolutely hated it. And I'll never forget when I was young, I sit at my dad's office, and there was an insurance guy who walked in his office. And when they were done with me, the insurance guy walks out. My dad looks at me. He goes, "Promise me you'll never become an insurance guy because I hate them." Now, I'm a commercial insurance broker. So my father's probably not happy with that decision, but the difference is I'm not miserable. I love it. I'm passionate about it. I'm good about it. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay defying what he wanted for me and doing something else and just finding the strength to do that. And the other thing, the biggest thing that, if I can leave you guys with anything today, because it was mentioned earlier today by one of our talented speakers, is that everybody here goes through tragedy or has been through tragedy. If you haven't, I'm sorry, it's coming. One time in your life, you're going to have to deal with something awful. You have to have an outlet. That was my biggest problem. And not an outlet to where, like, okay, you know, I can go work out for 3 hours one day a week or 2 days. It's got to be consistent over years. And that was a major issue for me in trying to find that. Once I finally found that, I also became a little bit more sane and normal and more mature. And to kind of tie everything together, that decision that I made to leave FSU to go back to my family was almost exactly 10 years ago to the day. And that decision to do that, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be here in front of you guys today. I wouldn't have gone to Dallas. I've had some other experiences in Colorado, some other businesses and stuff I've been involved with, and that's what I really love about talking about this is the psychology of it and kind of the butterfly effect of knowing that one decision I made 10 years ago has put me to where I am today. And I am totally okay with that and really happy. So I am truly honored and humbled to be back in Tallahassee and in front of everybody. And I want to thank the fellow speakers, and thanks for having me. Thank you.